was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific. The Great Wall was then at its very beginning. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When when you have read these It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days, but neither ship. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous. When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose, an object that gleamed whitely in the that it was, but I whose surface the writing. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose it was plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the or pit of their for grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but in some awestruck at this, I stood vast, Polyphemus-like and loathsome. It darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith. About I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I have indistinct recollection. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon. But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries. It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men. Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed. worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
January 1st, 1864.
Powder Blast is the perfect tool for assassin mains in Dragon's Dogma. It lets you set an explosive trap on the ground that you can detonate whenever you like. As you walk around, a trail of powder will follow you. You can make the spark follow some unique and much larger paths as long as you don't extend about 16 meters. The spark will mess with your enemy a bit, and the explosion causes excellent stagger, burning, and damage in general. While using it mid-combat can get you hit, the potential to set up before the fight begins is excellent. Use it to break up a large group of foes or to gain a better opening. On downed monsters, it can be really fun, as hitting their weak spot results in fantastic results. You're going to need a sword to use this skill in the first place, which is going to give you some very aggressive options to pair it with. Powder Blast is the perfect tool for assassin mains in Dragon's
You know, it's been thought of that our brains do not regenerate. Our brain cells are not renewed, okay? This is completely false information because the brain cell can regenerate. In fact,
are you tired of being inconsistent? Do you want to know the secrets holding you back from reaching Immortal and Radiant? Well, have no fear, because your favorite Radiant Zero is here. In this guide, I'll go in depth on all the ins and outs of crosshair placement, starting with the fundamental concepts like pre-aiming and moving into advanced concepts later in the video, such as angle alignment and anti-crosshair placement, so be sure to stick around for the whole guide. This video is broken down into 3 main levels: beginner, intermediate, and pro, and in each one, I'll cover the major aspects of crosshair placement associated with those ranks to help you improve and finally rank up. But quickly, before I hop into the nitty gritty, I'd like to mention that I have partnered with Buff to give away Valorant points to you guys. Just Buff make a stack buff. So now that you have all your skin your heart desires, let's talk about what exactly is crosshair placement, since it's a very common term that people like to throw around a lot. Essentially, crosshair placement is the act of placing your crosshair in such a way that it takes the least amount of time and mouse movement to kill your enemy. Simply put, the goal of crosshair placement is to set up your crosshair in a way that a half-disabled grandpa on a wheelchair can hit the shot. If he can't, then you can definitely improve upon your crosshair placement. Well, Saro, how do I improve my crosshair placement then? Depending on your rank, you will need to prioritize different aspects of crosshair placement, which is why I have broken this video into 3 main levels. Starting off with the most basic idea, which is to keep your crosshair at enemy head level. Since everyone's mom already knows about this concept, I will keep it very brief, focusing more on the improvement aspect. Essentially, you should know that aiming at head level equals easy headshots, and headshots equals easy kills. Despite what you tell yourself, if you are in these lower ranks, I promise you that you aren't always aiming directly at head level. If you don't believe me, then just simply record a few rounds of your games and your ego will quickly shatter once you realize that you are actually mopping the floor half the time. To practice keeping your crosshair at head level, I would recommend doing the prems method with the practice bots without moving your crosshair vertically at all. You can also practice this in a deathmatch to get used to the different elevations and heights. Try to look for specific marks on the maps to help you remember where to place your crosshair, such as dice on ascent, generator midline, and pretty much any metal or wooden box found on any map. Over time, you won't need these anymore as your brain will become better at visualizing head elevations, but initially, I recommend that you are consciously focusing on maintaining this headshot level. Also, a quick tip, I know those beautiful skins can be distracting, but instead of looking down, just use G to drop your current weapon. Trust me, it may save your life. And now, moving on to the final low rank concept, which is learning how to pre-aim properly. Just like maintaining headshot level, pre-aiming is extremely fundamental and is a huge part of having consistent aim. The idea is that you place your crosshair relative to the angle that you want to peek so that when you swing out, your crosshair is already on the enemy's head. If done correctly, you will only need to use your keyboard without actively moving your mouse. You are basically doing all the aiming before you peek the enemy, which in turn will make you significantly more consistent as you will only have to focus on small micro adjustments later on. The only time you don't want to be pre-aiming and instead hugging the angle is when you're clearing off angles like shown here. The best way to practice is to go either into a deathmatch or a custom game and focus on pre-aiming all the common angles players can beat. I would also recommend for those starting out to ping the angle before peeking so you can get a better idea of how you will align your crosshair. Pre-aiming combined with maintaining good headshot level will improve your aim and consistency dramatically, allowing you to finally escape out of low elo. Now let's move on to the intermediate section, which should contain most of the gold to diamond players out there. Specifically, we'll be discussing how to anticipate/predict enemy peeks and how to efficiently cut angles. Let's start with predicting how the enemy will peek you. So in Valorant, there are three main ways the enemy can peek you. 1. A standard peek where the enemy peeks a short distance and stops when they see you. 2. A wide peek where the enemy runs farther into the open before stopping. And 3. Jiggle peek where the enemy peeks very tight while strafing. If your crosshair is placed exactly where the enemy will peek, all you have to do is react and shoot without needing to move your mouse at all. Although it seems like it's completely random and impossible to predict how the enemy will peek, there is actually a neat way to find out. Essentially, you want to put yourself in the enemy's shoes. If you were them, how would you peek the angle? Would you stop to fully clear it, or would you skip past the angle as it is an off angle? By thinking about it this way, you can get an idea of how the enemy will likely peek you. So if you're playing a standard angle, which is always cleared, you should have your crosshair a bit closer to the wall, since the enemy will likely stop to clear you. On the other hand, if you are playing an off angle, you can expect the enemy to still be running, since they are likely trying to swing the next standard angle, suggesting that you should hold your crosshair a bit farther from the wall. What about the jiggle peek? Should I hold my crosshair very tight to kill the enemy? Most of the time the answer is no, because if they're trying to commit to the fight, they will likely swing out, forcing you to flick and rely on luck. When you account for your reaction time, the server lag, and randomness of the enemy movement, holding angles super tight doesn't make any sense. The only time I would recommend holding tight angles is if you have an operator, as it is far more consistent to land a body shot than a headshot on someone who is jiggle peeking. Another thing to consider when deciding on how wide to hold an angle is the distance you are from the angle. The closer you are to an angle, the farther you should place your crosshair from the wall, since the enemy is going to be moving faster across your screen. On the contrary, if you're farther from the wall, then you want to be holding your crosshair a little closer, since the opponents will run slower across your screen. In terms of practice, you can try improving your reaction time through third-party benchmarks like humanbenchmark.com, but don't expect crazy improvements because your reaction time is largely affected by genetics and the latency of your PC. However, the benchmark can still be very useful as it gives you an idea of how wide or tight you should hold the angle, because if you're getting 500 millisecond reaction time, you probably shouldn't be holding your angles like this. I also want to mention that you should always hold the side or edge of the smoke, Astro Wall or Viper Ultimate. The enemy likely won't swing out the middle since it exposes them to too many angles. Instead, they will likely peek on the side because it's more safe as it allows them to isolate more angles. It's usually a good idea to pre-fire a few bursts just in case someone is holding the other side. So try to always use this concept to your advantage, and I promise you will start getting a lot more kills when you're holding down a bomb site or playing post-plant. This brings me to my last intermediate concept, which is cutting angles. Once you are comfortable with maintaining headshot level and pre-aiming, you want to combine these into a form that allows you to properly clear every angle. Essentially, this is the disciplined version of pre-aiming, also known as slicing the pie, where you strafe to clear every angle as if someone is there. A big mistake I see people making is that they get lazy with pre-aiming and forget to clear all the angles between the angle they are at and the angle they want to hard clear. If I just swing out, I would have to flick back to the enemy and be exposed to multiple angles at the same time, increasing the luck involved. Instead, notice how I'm strafing to clear every angle instead of just swinging out. So please don't get lazy and remember to stop after every angle. So if someone is actually there, all you have to do is react and shoot them. The best way to practice this would be to go into a custom game and cut every angle as if you're getting ready to execute onto a site. You can also practice cutting angles with the practice bots in the range during your warm-up by slicing the angle slowly using this wall. Although some people suggest that you should practice this in a comp game or a deathmatch, I would advise against it as you will quickly forget about it and go back to playing normally. If you think about it, whenever you are pushing a site, you have to worry about the same angles every time. By practicing this in a custom game, you will quickly develop muscle memory for clearing every angle, which will result in you going through the proper motions on autopilot when you're in an actual game. Finally, let's go on to the legendary pro section, which includes all the secrets you've been dying to know and exactly what's going on in the high elo brain. More specifically, I'll be focusing on two major topics: angle alignment and anti-crosshair placement. The idea of angle alignment boils down to the idea of lining up your crosshair to hold multiple angles at once. As this concept is best explained through examples, let's say you're in a 1v1 on bind A site. The bomb is planted and you run short. Many players would hold this position like I'm showing right now, but this is completely wrong. While holding this position, you have to worry about many angles where you can get peeked, such as heaven, both sides of triple, from U-haul, and from flank. If you're holding left side triple and get peeked from the right side, you'll have to rely on flicking to the enemy who already has their crosshair on your head, giving them a huge advantage. Instead, in this example, you should go to U-Haul, where you're protected from flank and are able to align your crosshair down the sight to cover any way the enemy can peek you. If the enemy swings out of either side of triple, close sight, or showers, your crosshair will already be aligned in their head, giving you a huge advantage. And if it's a 1v2 and the enemy swing you at the same time, you'll be able to collat and kill both of them since they're peeking from the same angle. Think of your crosshair as a straight line, which kills anyone passing by. If you have to move your line to too many places, then you're basing the fight off luck and which angles the enemy will peek you. By aligning the angles, you're removing luck from the equation, giving you significantly more consistent aim and crosshair placement. Another example is holding mid on breeze. Instead of holding it like this, where you can get peeked from 3 different angles, bottom mid, top mid, and elbow, you should align the bottom mid wall with the close elbow wall, which will merge all of these angles into just one. Now, it won't matter which angle the enemy peeks you from, because you will have perfect crosshair placement for all 3 angles. There are hundreds of examples on all the maps, but instead of going over every single one and making this video 5 hours long, just remember that if you're holding an angle where enemies can peek you from different positions, align the angles together to minimize crosshair adjustments. By removing a lot of the luck and randomness, all you will have left is to react and shoot. This brings me to the final point regarding pro crosshair placement, which is to abuse anti-crosshair placement. The idea of anti-crosshair placement boils down to disturbing your enemy's crosshair placement in order to give you a huge advantage when taking 1v1 duels. There are 2 main ways you can accomplish this. You can mess up their horizontal crosshair placement through specific peaks, or you can mess up their vertical crosshair placement by changing elevations. First, let's talk about the horizontal aspect. So during post plants or any situation really, you can bring your opponent's crosshair closer to the wall by jiggling or jump peeking. Then once your enemy has their crosshair very close to the wall to pre-aim you, you can then swing really wide, catching them off guard and forcing them to rely on a wide flick. This will definitely mess up their crosshair placement, and as long as you're pre-aiming the enemy, you'll have a major advantage here. This strategy is really useful in 1v1 post plant situations, as you can jiggle to get them off the bomb, and then full swing to secure the kill while completely catching them off guard. Now let's talk about the vertical aspect of anti-crosshair placement. The idea is similar, but it's instead focused on increasing or decreasing your head elevation to mess up the enemy's crosshair placement. The simplest way to decrease your head elevation is to crouch around the corner, such as in U-Haul, as the enemy would have their crosshair way above your head, giving you an element of surprise on the opponents. Some people think that you should never crouch when holding an angle, but in reality, crouching can give you a big advantage, as your opponent will likely be aiming above your head. The only major suggestions I have here is to not do this in low elo, because the enemies are probably already aiming at your body. Also, don't do this when you're holding an angle far away, because the adjustments for the opponent will be very minor, and actually puts you in a disadvantage as you are unable to move from the position. The other way you can disturb your enemy's vertical crosshair placement is by increasing your head elevation. For example, when you're pushing long, you can jump or updraft on top of this ledge to catch the opponents off guard, as they are likely aiming for the swing below. You can also do this when you're peeking showers by jumping on top of the wooden boxes, giving you a crazy height elevation that your opponents likely aren't aiming at. There are many spots like this across all maps, but remember that if you're able to play on top of a box or a container, you should be playing on the very edge so that you're able to fall back quickly if you miss your shots. Just remember to change up your elevation as you peek or hold angles to throw off your opponent's crosshair placement. The whole goal is to make your shots as easy to land as possible while making your opponent's shots as hard to connect as possible. Keeping your crosshair at head level, learning to properly predict enemy peaks, practicing cutting angles, and developing a strong grasp of advanced concepts like angle alignment and anti-crosshair placement will help you be way more consistent and win a lot more duels. Huge shoutouts to everyone who recently boosted my Discord server, links in the description. If you're struggling with bad teammates, consider watching my in-depth guide on the screen. If anything I said in this guide was helpful, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Peace.
There's no wrong way to play a video game, but Rockstar definitely didn't expect you to play GTA 5 There's no wrong way to play a video game, but Rockstar definitely didn't expect you to play GTA 5 like this. Just using intended mechanics, it is possible to break the story of GTA 5, doing things that should not be possible. I have spent years finding the best examples to show you today. The mission Meltdown sees Merriweather attack Amanda and Tracy, with Michael barely managing to keep them alive. At the end of the mission, Michael understandably sends his family away so they can hide out until the heat dies down.
I asked Amanda and the kids to move out for a few days. They came after my family.
Strangely, despite the need to lie low, Amanda is still perfectly willing to come back to the house for a round of tennis.
Tennis, come on, let's play.
After the game, of course, Amanda disappears and presumably goes back into hiding. After you complete the mission Friends Reunited, if you switch to Michael, this will immediately start the mission Fame or Shame, where Trevor and Michael come face to face for the first time in 9 years. This mission automatically starts so that Michael is not accessible in free roam. This is to prevent the two from meeting prior to the mission. However, if you specifically kill Michael at the start of Fame or Shame, it will respawn you at the hospital as Michael. Now technically before the mission where Trevor and Michael reunite, you can bring them together, making their eventual confrontation in Fame or Shame make little sense. Not only will they not acknowledge their association, they seem to not want to be hostile with each other at all. After the mission card Libre, Trevor and Michael are meant to lie low because they've stolen Martin Madrazo's wife. They are not meant to go into the city as Martin will track them down to kill them.
My spotter saw you coming into the city, Michael. You will be dead soon.
But despite this, Franklin can set up a hangout with Michael.
You wanna hang out or something?
Yeah, great.
Good, I'll see you soon, man.
Good to see you, man.
Good hanging out with you, man.
Is it?
Well, I hope so.
Martin's henchmen, however, are nowhere to be found. On the mission Complications, you sneak into Michael's house as Franklin. When you reach the garage, of course, you're meant to take the car, but you can actually run outside if you desire. What's funny is that the garage will continue to open for you as if you own the home. At the end of the mission Friends Reunited, Trevor gets to Los Santos, but he has yet to confront Michael or even meet Franklin. Despite having not met Franklin, if you use Franklin during the day to shoot rockets at Trevor's safe house, Trevor will text message Franklin asking him to stop. This of course makes no sense in the plot, for how could Trevor have Franklin's number? On the mission Repossession, Franklin is awarded an Employee of the Month plaque. This can still be seen in Simeon's office as you go off with Lamar to repossess the bike. However, if you mission fail and leave the mission, the plaque will change to show Simeon instead of Franklin. This is of course the modified plaque that Simeon makes for himself after Franklin betrays him, but obviously it shouldn't be here. Given that you have yet to even complete repossession, Franklin hasn't betrayed Simeon. I guess Simeon had it made early, just on the off chance that Franklin betrayed him in the future.
It wasn't easy picking a winner.
The obvious approach to the big score requires you to drill a huge hole into the side of a bank. You'd think that this would take some time to repair, but in reality, before you even complete the mission, if you return to the area with Michael, you can see that it has already been filled as if nothing had ever happened. During Fame or Shame, Trevor reunites with Michael, but he has not met Franklin at this stage. However, if you set up a hangout with Michael and the pair, they will act as if they know each other.
Hey, Frank, let's do something.
Yeah, all right.
T, it's me. Yeah, I'm meeting up with Franklin. You want to hang out?
Just love to, Mikey.
Cool.
Hey, man. Let's go. Ladies, let's go get our nails done. So what were you two like when y'all was kids?
Well, Michael always was a bit of a pussy.
Yeah, Trevor was always a lot of a psycho.
This is fun.
Enjoy
I'll
yourself.
tell you, kid, whatever you take away from our time together, take away this. You both hate me. You both do. I see it now.
Oh, man, no, we don't. Nobody hate you, man. That ain't true.
It was good hanging out, gents.
For real, man. See you soon.
Just like old times, Mikey.
On the mission friend request, Michael watches a live presentation where he then takes out the CEO. The illusion of it being live is shattered if you wait until nighttime before going to Michael's house to watch the presentation. Despite it being nighttime, the so-called live presentation will still be showing in the day.
Hello? Oh! Oh, Jesus! Whoa! Whoa!
As I'm sure most of you know, after you complete the first assassination mission, Franklin gets a new home. However, this does not occur until after you receive Lester's phone call, so it is possible to get inside Franklin's old home before the call can initiate.
Hey, it's done.
I know. Good work.
Alright, well shit, let me know about the next thing.
And we needed someone to live there for tax purposes, so some guys are moving your stuff in.
Oh, shit!
It's yours. Enjoy it. 3671 Wispy Mound Drive.
Obviously, those guys are very good at their job. Now that Franklin is in here, he is locked in, unless of course he dies or you switch character. It is possible to do the mission long stretch very early in the game, but you can actually leave it until just before the Blitz play heist if you really want to. This means that it is possible to do it after Franklin has already moved out of the house with Aunt Denise, making the cutscene dialogue no longer make sense.
I mean, what the hell going on here?
Wait a minute, Franklin, what are you doing here?
I live here. This half my house too.
So you stay?
Even after Franklin moves out of Aunt Denise's house, if you sneak around it, he will occasionally text you asking you why you're doing so. Additionally, if you fire rockets at this old safe house, Franklin will text you and respond as if he still lived there. During the jewel store heist, Michael and his crew break open a bunch of cases and steal a bunch of jewelry. At the end of the heist, once you've lost the cops, there is no fail condition for going back to the jewel store to see your handiwork. Finally arriving back at the jewel store, the alarms will still be going off, but the entire jewel store will be restored. The cases will now be bulletproofed and they'll be completely restocked and repaired. At the end of the mission card Libre, Trevor drives away with Michael and Patricia to go into hiding, and you are forced to switch to Franklin. However, if you use Franklin to return to your previous location, Trevor and Patricia will be gone, and Michael will be driving around by himself.
Hey man, weird seeing you here. Can we go get a drink or something?
I can't right now, dude.
See you soon then, man.
It is possible for Trevor and Michael to meet before you even complete Trevor's first mission. This is achieved by first going into the mission Mr. Phillips with autosave on and skipping through the cutscene to get access to Trevor. You then go to the ammunition and buy something to trigger an autosave. Then by loading this autosave, the game takes you out of the mission and tries to put you into free mode as Trevor. However, as Trevor was not unlocked before the mission, the game gets confused and loads for a very long time before eventually giving you control of Michael. Your character swap wheel will now show Trevor even though you cannot switch to him, but more oddly, if you walk away, Trevor will also spawn.
You getting off on this, little man?
Trevor unfortunately doesn't acknowledge Michael, but this can change if you switch to Franklin and drive to their location. Making sure to only get close to Michael, he will offer a hangout which should be declined.
I can't, man. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'll see you soon.
I just hope you don't also watch me sleep. You want to grab a beer?
Trevor will now not only acknowledge Michael, but he will also offer him a hangout. Unfortunately, whether or not you accept, Trevor will just walk away.
Now there's a plan.
You go grab us a ride.
Following him will have the same result that following any of the main characters always does, which is pretty funny given that this save puts you back before Mr. Phillips, so Trevor technically shouldn't know Michael is alive.
Are you following me, cowboy? I think I liked you better when you hid from me, buddy. Fuck off, Mikey! Leave me alone!
The sub prep mission for the Merriweather heist ends with you dropping off the sub, and then Floyd takes a car and drives away. However, after dropping off the sub, if you run a particular distance and then run back after the mission ends, you'll see that the sub has disappeared and Floyd has been replaced by a generic NPC. In older versions of the game, Michael's house was fully accessible to Franklin if you went there before they met. Rockstar has long since fixed this, but if you still go to his house during this period, you can occasionally find Tracy outside. She and Franklin will speak as if they know each other, despite that not being so at this point in the story.
Why do you want to hang out with my dad?
Hey, Tracy. Hey there, Tracy. Oh, hey, Tracy. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Tracy. It's me, Frank.
During prologue, Michael, Brad, and Trevor flee in a vehicle that creates tire marks in the snow. Later in the game, during Bury the Hatchet, when Michael goes back 9 years after the events of prologue, these same marks can still be found. During Bury the flee in a vehicle. During prologue, Michael, Brad, and Trevor flee in a vehicle that creates tire marks in the snow. Later in the game, during Bury the Hatchet, when Michael goes back 9 years after the events of prologue, these same marks can still be found. On the Polito score setup, you are tasked with attracting the bank's attention by triggering the alarm. Oddly, the game considers you to be able to attract attention in the wrong way. Even more strangely, once you trigger the alarm with a bullet, you can freely use an RPG against the bank, and it seems the bank no longer cares. If you have seen any speedruns of GTA 5, you'd know that running in any direction during the final prologue shootout will cause the shootout to end and the cutscene to play. One possible reason Rockstar did this is if you actually die during the shootout, Michael will stand up, which kinda gives away that he's still alive.
I'm standing!
At the end of Monkey Business, Trevor tearfully lets Patricia go, while Martin shows clear fear of Trevor. It seems this fear extends to his guards, as they will not do anything hostile to Trevor, regardless of what he does.
Why, oh, why weren't you drowned at birth? Oh, by the way, that's entirely your fault, you dumbass!
On the mission Mr. Phillips, during a cutscene, Trevor apparently kills Johnny. Despite this, if you shoot him after the cutscene ends, you will get a kill confirmation effect, suggesting he wasn't dead at all. Although, this effect actually isn't present if you scare off Ashley before you shoot Johnny. On the mission I Fought the Law, Trevor, Michael, and Franklin steal some cars for Devin Weston. Once they acquire the cars, they call Molly to tell her of their success using the number 346-555-0174.
Speak.
Ah, the lady from before. Devin's assistant.
Bring them to Hayes Auto on Little Bighorn in South Los Santos. Mr. Weston and I will meet you there.
After the mission, if you call this same number again, it doesn't connect through to Molly, instead it connects through to Cletus.
This is Cletus. I got both hands on a gun right now, so leave a message.
On the mission Marriage Counseling, Michael chases after a tennis coach and finds him hiding in Madrazo's home. It turns out that the tennis coach doesn't actually drive to this house. He is scripted to drive somewhere else, but when Michael loses him during normal gameplay, he is teleported to that location. Therefore, if we take a strange route up the hill, we never lose the coach, so we can find him chilling in a random driveway, a street away from where he is meant to be hiding according to the plot. He acts just like a normal NPC. You can even bring him down to where the confrontation is meant to take place. Of course, the mission doesn't progress because you have to bring down the white truck. Also, if you harm him in any way, the mission fails. The tennis coach wasn't actually going to a random house. He was going back to his house, which is across the road from Madrazo's house. You can tell this is his house because of the various different tennis-related implements scattered around, and I don't know if it means anything, but there is some pornography out the back. On the Bureau raid, you have the option to pick the cheap and less skilled gunman Norm.
Ah, Norm.
Came across as a bit of an idiot, but could be useful.
Unfortunately, he dies during the raid and cannot be revived.
Ah, shit, man, he's dead.
Except, if you fail 3 times and skip over the scene where he dies, he actually survives to the end of the mission. This is clearly not intended because the game will get confused and call Norm Packy for the rest of the mission, playing the dialogue that occurs when everyone survives as a result of you picking the more skilled gunman.
Alright, we all gotta change before we get there. At some point soon, an APB will go out looking for firemen. We cannot be playing dress up when that happens.
We need to get to the right and towards this fire truck as soon as possible. We made it, didn't we? Whole crew's intact. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Gustavo Moda, and Patrick McReary. When people are talking about the time guys went into the bureau and wiped their files, man, those will be the names, the rumors. This one will go down in the ages.
When you are fleeing at the end of the jewel store heist and entering into the tunnel, it is traditionally daytime, but after you leave the tunnel, it is afternoon. Obviously, you are not in the tunnel long enough for this to make sense, but there is a trigger in the tunnel to change the time of day to 7:20, regardless of what time it was when you entered. Using the speedrun route that avoids entering the tunnel enables us to see this change. The mission Derail does not remove characters from the area when the cutscene starts. This means that you can place characters within the scene that shouldn't be there.
What went wrong with my life?
Trevor about? Tell Trevor. The monthly train is coming through.
What monthly train?
The monthly train.
Where have you two been?
Getting some fresh air.
An oversight by Rockstar causes a story inconsistency on the obvious big score heist. The license plate of the Oracle you drive is 81TDS937, which is actually the same license plate of Dave Norton's Oracle, as can be seen on the mission Three's Company. Dave has no known association with the big score heist, and even if he did, having his official car used wouldn't make much sense.
Tell me, Davey, you expense this ride to the taxpayer?
During the mission complications, Franklin breaks into Michael's home and finds Jimmy and Tracy on the upper floor. Oddly, the phone that Tracy is using to speak to her friend is actually Trevor's phone from later in the game.
Well, the other day, I walked in on him, and he was jerking off over pictures of my friends. No, not you. The hot ones, Lauren and Lisa. No, I didn't mean it like that. You're beautiful and interesting. It's just that, you know, guys they just don't get you. Hello? Hello? Fuck. Whatever. Bitch.
On the mission The Third Way, Michael goes to take out Stretch at a basketball court, who is busy showing images on his phone to his friends. This wouldn't be unusual, except it appears to be Trevor's phone.
Only pair of bitches that Stretch tolerate are the ones that worked this pole last night. Man, that's bullshit. You wanna see? I'll show you right here, nigga. Watch. Y'all like that, right?
Yo, that's some fucked up shit, my nigga.
Check that out.
Hey, is that 2 bitches or is it 15, man? That's a lot of meat.
Oh shit, yeah. Uh-huh, yeah, boom.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and if there's any other compilations you want me to make, be sure to leave them in the comments. I wish you all the best.
Bicho, izole. Tümis, mis?